We good? Are we good? We're good. Anyway, hi again, everybody. I must say, to my eternal shame, I have not yet been to Nashville. The closest I've been is to Memphis a couple times, which I'm sure is your heated rival, and you have a lifelong eternal struggle with Nashville, with Memphis. But I have been there. That's as close as I've been. But it's great. Thank you for taking the time and for having me and Ryan there today. It's interesting. I heard in the beginning when somebody was saying building a future, they were reading it and saying building a future in anti-Semitic Krakow. Well, life's a little more complicated than that. And I have been living here for 20 years. So I would say that I know that we all have presuppositions about Poland and about Krakow. And I'm not saying that people are wrong or right. I'm just saying let's have a discussion. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time for questions. And I am aware of what people normally think about Poland. As a Jew growing up in New York and then living in Israel, moved to Poland 20 years ago, I had never any thought about Poland, Jewish Poland, much besides the Holocaust or anti-Semitism. So I also started out from that point of view, but I have been living here for 20 years and have a little bit of experience and have come to see, not to say that there is an anti-Semitism here, but I've come to see a lot more of complexity in Poland, just as you have in many places. So I'm going to tell you a story today that I think is a counterintuitive story. And based on the fact that before I even started, people were talking about anti-Semitism, then I think that I'm correct in assuming that you guys have some presuppositions about Krakow. Well, let me start with a little story, which is of two sisters. There were two sisters about 10 years ago who grew up, two Polish sisters in Krakow, and they grew up Catholic, as just about everybody is in Poland today. Poland's about 95% Catholic. And these two sisters were living with their mom because the parents had split up and the father left the family when the girls were young. And they had no contact with the father, so really didn't want to have anything to do with the father's family. And when one of the two sisters, the older sister, who was 1 year older, she got a little curious about the father and the father's family because they had no contact, and she decided to do some research. And she found out something very, very surprising. Through this research, she realized that their father, was Jewish. And she got very interested in everything Jewish. Again, no clue, no connection to anything Jewish before. Found out that her father was Jewish. She became very excited, very interested in this, started to study with a rabbi that was in Krakow at that point, started to volunteer in the community. The JCC opened while she was going through this process, and she became very, very involved with the JCC. But her sister, the younger sister, not interested, not really for her. Wasn't that she was necessarily Catholic or very, Catholic at all, but just didn't really understand what her older sister was so excited about and spending all her time with this Jewish community. And the older sister continued to be involved and the younger sister continued to not be interested. And one day, finally, the older sister dragged her younger sister to the JCC, and she brought her to a Hanukkah party at our JCC. And the younger sister met a certain JCC employee who was at that point a very eligible bachelor who had a very senior position at our JCC. Let's just, for argument's sake, code word, let's just call him Jonathan. And this younger sister met Jonathan, and she became much more interested in her Jewish roots, and they became a couple, and they decided to get married. And because she was Jewish only from her father's side, she decided to go through conversion, and she went through conversion. And then the two of them got married in the courtyard in front of the building. And right now, that couple that met at the JCC after that girl's sister, that woman's sister, found out that she was Jewish, that couple is now expecting their first child. Jonathan and this mystery woman are expecting their first child. So this is a very nice story. Of course, by telling you the name of her partner is Jonathan, I may have slightly given away that this story is about me and my wife, my now wife, who is expecting our first child, and who grew up, as I was saying, without any idea that she was Jewish, and is now, for years now, since we've been married, has been very, very involved and integrated into the Jewish community, only because her sister at a certain point happened to get interested and happened to look into her family's history that was completely unknown to them until they were both in their 20s. So this is a very nice story. And I think what's particularly interesting about this story is not only that it's my personal story. What's interesting about this story is that this is not a very uncommon story. This is something that's happening every day in Krakow, in Warsaw, in big cities in Poland, that young people, or not so young people, but people are finding out that they have Jewish roots, that grew up without knowing they had Jewish roots. And this is happening today in great numbers in Poland in 2021, and in the previous, it started a few years ago. So this story is very interesting, but it's not self-evident. In other words, if I tell you this story now, it's not clear to you how we got to this moment in the year 2021 with young people finding out they're Jewish in a country that we as Jews all grow up thinking is just a place full of anti-Semites and full of no Jews at all. So maybe we're going to take a little bit of a short history lesson here. I'm sure, I hope you guys don't mind, and I'm not a historian, so I'll apologize in advance to any historians in the crowd that might know a little bit more about it or a lot more about it than I do. Poland has a very, very old Jewish community. Poland's Jewish community dates back 1,000 years. 1,000 years. From the 10th century, there were Jews living in Poland, and Jews were living in Poland and were welcome to Poland in great numbers because they were kicked out of other countries in Europe. It's worth noting that the reason there were a lot of Jews living in Poland is because they were welcome here. Now, at certain points, they were more welcome here, certain points less welcome here. One king liked the Jews, the next king decided to get rid of the Jews and hated the Jews and kicked out the Jews, up and down, up and down, up and down. But it's worth trying to understand how Jewish Poland was and how Polish the Jewish world at this point is. At a certain point in the 18th century, 3 out of every 4 Jews on the planet were living in Poland. That's a little bit like the United States and Israel together today, was what Poland was for the Jewish world. 3 out of every 4 Jews were Polish. If we move forward into the 20th century, by 1939, on the edge of the eve of World War II, the eve of the Holocaust, Poland had 3.5 million Jews. That's in a country of 35 million at that point. Poland was 10% Jewish leading up to World War II. Sorry. Poland was 10% Jewish. The United States, do we know what percentage Jewish the United States is today? About 1.5, maybe 2%. Poland was 10% Jewish. Cities like, I'm not sure of the Jewish percent, what percent Jewish Nashville is, but the cities in Warsaw, in Poland in 1939, a city like Warsaw, which was the capital, was 1/3 Jewish. Krakow, where I live, was 25% Jewish. Cities in the east of Poland that you may have heard of, cities like Lublin, cities like Białystok, were over 50% Jewish. 60% of the lawyers in Poland and 40% of the doctors in 1939 were Jewish. Jews were overwhelmingly integrated into the middle class and into Polish society. This idea that we often have that Jewish life looked like Fiddler on the Roof, just Jews in these tiny shtetls totally separate from their Polish neighbors, is not true. That was a part of the story, but Jewish life was very much in the cities. There are no places on earth today outside of Israel that have cities that were as Jewish as these cities were in Poland before the war. Poland was an incredibly Jewish place for a very, very long time. And if we want to understand the Holocaust, even before we get to this idea of Jewish rebirth and what's happening today, to understand the Holocaust, to understand what was lost, we need to understand what was in Poland for 1,000 years. In 1939, on September 1st, Germany invades from the West, and the Soviet Union invades 2 weeks later from the East. And by the end of 1945, by the end of World War II in 1945, over 6 million European Jews are murdered. Half of that number are Polish Jews, right? Half of the victims of the Holocaust were Polish Jews. Over 90% of this incredible civilization that I mentioned, that had been here for 1,000 years, over 90% of the Jews in Poland are murdered. 90% of the Jews in Krakow, similar percentage across the cities, over 90%, over 3.1 million of the 3.5 million Jews living in Poland in 1939 are murdered by the Germans and their accomplices across Europe. Now, for most of us thinking about Jewish life in Poland, this for us is usually the end. Maybe we understand there were Jews living in Poland for a long time. Maybe our families came from there. Our families probably did come from there, as Alex's did, because 75% of American Jews trace their heritage to Poland. Now, sometimes we don't even know it. We say, my family was Austrian, or my family was Russian. But very often that means they had a Russian passport or an Austrian passport, Austro-Hungarian passport, but that really was Poland because Poland was partitioned for 123 years. So very often what we're talking about is our ancestors coming from Poland. So when we talk about 1945, we think about Poland and we think that that's the end of Jewish life. We know there were survivors. We know they came to the United States. They came to to Nashville, to New York, to Cuba, to Israel, to London. Survivors left, who were lucky enough to survive, left Poland and went and rebuilt their lives everywhere, anywhere that took them in and wherever they could. And Jewish life began to thrive in new places. And we often think that that was the end of Jewish life in Poland, but not quite. That wasn't, all the Jews didn't leave Poland. All the survivors didn't leave Poland. Some of the survivors stayed in Poland during communism. The Jewish life limped on after World War II. We don't hear about it, we don't think about it, but it did. Some of the Jews stayed in Poland, and there was anti-Semitism again in Poland after the war. The Communist Party was not a very good place, a welcoming place for Jews. And at a certain point, the remaining Jews, the Polish Jewish Holocaust survivors, the ones who chose not to leave or couldn't leave for all different reasons after the war, went underground and they hid their identities, they changed their names. And if people had children, if Jews had built families in Poland in the 70s and 80s, they very often didn't tell their own children that they were Jewish, which is the exact story of my wife and her sister. The parents didn't tell them that they were Jewish because they didn't want to burden them with that. If they were Jewish in Poland in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't a very easy place to be Jewish, and you wouldn't burden your child with this knowledge and have them be exposed to anti-Semitism. So Poland had Jews living in it after the war. Not all the Jews left. They went underground during communism. And then in 1989, something very relevant for all of us in the world happened. The Berlin Wall falls, and suddenly Poland is free once again. Now, the last time Poland was free was a long time earlier, right? We had 45 years of communism, and we had 6 years of World War II before the communism. So if you think about it, Poland from 1939 until 1989 wasn't a free country. And in 1989, when Poles wake up from this 50-year-long nightmare of World War II and communism, and they're a free country, they regain their independence as other countries around Eastern Europe did. When they regain their independence, they take a look around at their country. And one of the things that they notice is that the country looks very different from the last time it was free. Why does it look very different? Well, not only that the cars look different, because they didn't look that different after 50 years of communism, but one of the things that looked very different was that in 1939, you had a huge minority of Jews. And in 1989, you essentially have no more Jews because the Jews have either been murdered or kicked out by the communists or driven underground by the communists. But non-Jewish Poles in 1989 become very, very interested in their Jewish neighbors. why, you might say, all these anti-Semitic Poles are so interested in what happened to the Jews. Well, let's remember that the Holocaust happened in Poland because the Jews were in Poland. That's why the Nazis built the camps in Poland, because that's where the Jews were. They're not going to build the camps at the edge of Europe and have to bring all the Jews to the camps. The Jews were already in Poland, so they were very efficient, the Nazis, and they built the camps where the Jews were. But why were the Jews there? The Jews were in Poland because they'd been kicked out of many other countries in Europe and were welcome in Poland over the years. So Poland's Jews and their non-Jews had a sometimes good relationship, sometimes not bad, sometimes not so good relationship, up and down this dialogue, as any minority and a majority have. We can think to our own country and think about difficult periods in our own past between majority and different minorities, and understand that things are often very complex. The same in Poland. But in 1989, when Poles want to sort of deal with this tragedy of the Holocaust, nobody had spoken about it during communism because the country was controlled by the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union didn't want Poland to be able to deal with its own difficult history of the Holocaust, because the Soviet Union itself was anti-Semitic and it wasn't in the interest of the Soviet Union to focus on Jewish suffering during the war. The Soviet Union focused on all the suffering based on the fascists and totalitarian, based on the fascists, let's say, who are attacking these poor countries of Europe. So during 1945 to 1989 in Poland, they didn't speak too much about the Holocaust. So in 1989, when Poland is free, these non-Jewish Poles are trying to connect and understand their own history. And to understand Polish history, they need to understand this unfinished chapter of what happened with the Jews. So Poles can't continue this dialogue with their Jewish neighbors because, again, the Jewish neighbors have been murdered or kicked out of the country or driven underground. So non-Jewish Poles start to become interested in everything Jewish. They start listening to Jewish music and playing Jewish music, and they start doing research about Jewish history and Jewish culture, and they start Jewish studies departments at the universities, and they start Jewish museums, and they start Jewish culture festivals like the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, which is the world's largest Jewish culture festival in its 32nd year, founded by two non-Jews, one of whom is still running the Jewish festival. So there's a tremendous interest in everything Jewish among non-Jews who are trying to get some closure, because this whole Jewish question is this unfinished issue in Poland that was never dealt with during the period of communism, when they weren't free and couldn't study what they wanted and learn about what they wanted, and they didn't have a free press or anything because of the totalitarian, the Soviet system there. So you start to have this tremendous amount of interest in everything non-Jewish among Jewish among non-Jews. And then something else very interesting happens. In 1993, Steven Spielberg comes to Krakow and he films a movie that I think you guys will know. No, not that movie. Different movie that he films in Krakow in 1990. Exactly. Thank you, Ryan. He films this movie. He films Schindler's List, which was filmed in the Jewish quarter of Krakow, where I am sitting and where Ryan is sitting right now. Filmed right all around us. It was filmed, and he films it in the Jewish quarter, which helps revitalize the Jewish quarter of Krakow, which had been kind of run down after the war and during communism. But Spielberg films Schindler's List here, and it helps revitalize this Jewish neighborhood. And people start to talk about this Jewish Renaissance, a Jewish Renaissance in Poland. The New York Times even writes an article called Poland's Jewish Renaissance. But what they're really talking about is non-Jews that are very interested in everything Jewish, but that has really set the stage for this environment that we have now, this situation that we have now, where young people like my wife find out they're Jewish, and then they're eager to connect to their Jewish heritage, because the environment today in Poland is overall, and there are many, many problems, as there are everywhere, and Poland has its share of problems, but still, after the Holocaust and after communism, young Jews, young Poles are finding out they're Jewish, and we are helping them connect and do that. So that's the main vision and the main mission of our our center, our JCC in Krakow, which was opened by this gentleman in the kippah who's attacking the rabbi with the hammer. No, I'm just kidding. He's not attacking the rabbi, although I do know this rabbi, so it is possible. But no, this is Prince Charles, of course, who is just helping put on the mezuzah on the front door of our JCC. And our JCC, I'm not sure about any other. For me, I have only worked in one JCC. So in my experience, if you want to start a JCC, you call Prince Charles, he comes with a hammer and he opens the JCC. But I'm guessing that's not the experience for every JCC, and ours is somewhat unique. So I will tell you our founding story, which was Prince Charles came to Krakow on an official state visit in 2002. And during his visit, he met with some survivors and he wanted to help them. And they came up with this idea because they have a lot of synagogues remaining in the Jewish quarter, but they didn't have a place to be together like a senior citizen center. And Prince Charles promised he would help the survivors in Krakow realize their dream of having a senior citizen center. So he got in touch with an organization in London that helped him realize his dream, along with the Joint, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee in the United States, the JDC. And instead of doing a center only for the seniors, they thought it would be a better idea to do something even bigger, a center for the seniors, but a center for the whole community of Krakow, and to help young people like my wife who are finding out they're Jewish, and dozens and hundreds of young people like her. So that's how our center got founded. Now we're gonna show you a very short film that we made a couple years ago, which a little bit talks about our JCC. And then me and Ryan are gonna tell you more about what we're doing.
Jewish communities around the world are made up of many interlocking pieces: JCCs, federations, synagogues, Jewish family services, Hillels, BBYO, Jewish preschools, kosher restaurants, and many more. In Krakow, our Jewish community also has many components, and all of those pieces are called JCC Krakow.
Briscoe.
BBYO.
Hillel.
Krakow. Senior Club.
Choir.
Jewish education.
Kosher catering. Hebrew classes.
Visitor services.
By supporting JCC Krakow, you're supporting an entire Jewish community and all the pieces that make it up, from Holocaust survivors like my friend Zosha to the little children in our preschool. So please, help us continue to rebuild Jewish life in Krakow. Jewish communities around the
Great. The sound was a little bit off on mine, like not connected. I hope it looked better on yours. I'm not sure if that was okay, but I hope you got a chance to see the little film. Now we're just going to maybe talk to you. Maybe Ryan, you want to talk us through the slides a little bit about what we're going to see there and tell us a little bit about what's going on in the center today?
Sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Ryan.
I originally come from Atlanta by way of the Jewish Federation there, so I've and also the JCC in parts. So I've had my fair share of American Judaism, and then I popped over to Krakow, and now I work with Jonathan and our team at JCC Krakow on the Ride for the Living, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But right now, we actually have the slideshow, and we're going to tell you a little bit about all of the various components that we just saw in the video. I would say, in my experience in Atlanta, we've got Jewish Family and Career Services, we've got Federation, we've got all of these legacy organizations and institutions that kind of support the larger Jewish community, of which, we're fortunate in Atlanta to have over 150,000 Jews, we think. And in Krakow, the community is a little bit smaller, and because of that, we don't have the level of generational support that's been built in other places like Atlanta, Nashville, New York, DC, LA, those kinds of places. And honestly and truly, JCC Krakow, it fills all of these roles within the community. And we're very proud of it. So first up is actually our senior club, where we have, I think right now we've got about 70 seniors, 50 of whom are Holocaust survivors. Many of them were children survivors of the Holocaust, and Jonathan can tell you a little bit more about their stories, because I've been living here for about 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years, and I know some of them, but not as well as I wish. So Jonathan knows a little bit more.
Yeah, so our survivors were generally survivors. They were mostly hidden children, so that's why they're a little bit younger than you might think. They were all teenagers or even younger, even 4 or 5, 3 years old during the war, and many of them. So most of our survivors weren't in the camps. They were hidden, whether on false papers with the non-Jewish family very often, or just in actual hiding sometimes. We have one of our members is the last Pole, that was last Jewish last survivor that was from Schindler's List. She's an active member here, which is kind of interesting. So our survivors are a big part of our community. There are about 55 survivors, and we are taking, doing everything for them. So with that, during normal times, they're in our building 6 days a week, dedicated space in the building, with language class and physical rehabilitation, and there's direct financial support if they need help. During COVID, we did everything we could to keep them safe. We did all the grocery shopping for our survivors for over the last year and a half, twice a week, delivered groceries to all of them really at no cost to them. I've just done everything to keep them safe, made all their medical appointments, brought them to all their medical appointments, and have done that. So for, based on, nothing is more important to us than taking care of our survivors. And that's really the heart and soul of what we're doing. At the same time, we understand that the future is our young people. And we are not only in a caretaking situation of taking care of our survivors, we want to create a community for the Jews that want to live here in Krakow. And we feel that wherever Jews want to live, they should be able to live. And we don't like when non-Jews tell Jews where to live. So we think that Jews also shouldn't tell Jews where to live. And if Jews want to live in Krakow, then we're going to help them have Jewish lives in Krakow, as long as that's a good place for them to live. So to that end, we opened a preschool, which is the first Jewish community preschool to open since the Holocaust in Krakow. We have about 18 or so children from the community. The name of the school is Frida, which in Yiddish means joy, but it also means joy in Polish, and it entered the Polish language from the Yiddish. So we think that shows the interconnectedness of Jewish culture and Polish culture. And that it opened, we're in our 5th year of the preschool, 4th year, 17, in our 5th year of the preschool, and it's been a huge success. And I get to see a little smiling, and not only do I get to walk in the building and see when we're fully open senior citizens and Holocaust survivors every day, then I get to go walk up one more floor and see their grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the building. So it's very exciting for us.
And yesterday, actually, Frida opened an art exhibit in our 1st floor, in our ground floor at JCC Krakow. And you might have heard in the video, we have in a normal year about upwards of 140,000 visitors that come through our building, who are traveling from all over the world, and they stop and they learn with us. They stop by and say hi, and upon entering the building, immediately to their, they see the reception desk in the very front, and then immediately to the right, we have kind of this big event space, which is where we hold a lot of our lectures and discussions and such. And we try to stock that room with interesting photos and art exhibitions and what have you. And right now, the Friday preschool just opened an exhibition. So when you walk into our building now, you see the artwork that the kids are creating at school. And also in our stairwell too, we've got a bunch of art, some old art projects that are kind of lining the stairwell as well.
Yeah, maybe next.
So next up, we've got BBYO. And again, in building this interconnected, intergenerational kind of Jewish pipeline, it starts in the preschool. We have also a new club for young families for kids that are a little bit graduated from preschool, a little bit older than kindergarten, called Bagel. And the kids meet with a set of educators, and the adults and the parents meet with their own separate set of educators, because a lot of the young parents did not have a formal Jewish education either. So the kids are learning about Judaism in their own way. The parents are learning about Judaism in their own way. And then after an hour of individual learning sessions sorted by demographics, they come back together, and the kids and the parents all have a meal, and they congregate and they talk about what they learned, and there are family discussions. So that's kind of next up in the pipeline. We have the preschool, we've got Club Bagel, and then we've got BBYO. And the BBYO chapter here, I would say is very similar, if not almost identical to a BBYO chapter that you would find at the Atlanta JCC, at the Nashville JCC, in any normal North American, Canadian, Israeli Jewish community center. They are almost entirely student run. So the students are working with the club coordinators to run their own programming. They have a leadership council who meet. They determine what the programming theme is going to be for the year. They kind of put together their own curriculums, their own discussions. They invite outside educators to come and talk to them. And they also attend international conferences. So if you go to a BBYO convention in America, then there's a chance that you'll find representation from either the Krakow BBYO or the Warsaw BBYO. And in that way, we are all connected, which I think is, as an Atlantan and as a former Jewish youth group member, when I was growing up in high school, I think that's just really cool. And in the same vein, we also have a Hillel chapter here, Hillel Gimel. Right now, we've got about 70 Hillel students. And something that is a little bit different in Krakow is that in America, I would generalize, and I would venture to say that the majority of the undergrads in America are between the ages of like 17, 18, and 22, 23. The normal pipeline obviously is high school and then university, higher education, what have you, and then you enter your career or go into a master's program or something like that a little bit later. But in Krakow and in Poland, it's a little bit more common to graduate from high school, do something, have a job, start your career, whatever, and then go to school a little bit later. So the makeup of our Hillel chapter is skews a little bit older. So the Hillel chapter actually kind of serves the secondary purpose of being our young adult club, for lack of better words. So if you're familiar with kind of the young adult makeup in America, of programming in America right now, we've got Birthright Israel, which is taking young Jews to Israel for highly subsidized, if not free trips. Hillel Gimel partners with Birthright. We send our own Birthright trips, same as an institution or an organization would in America. In addition to Birthright, in America, you might know about Moishe House, which is helping young adults post-college, pre-family, find community, and people are opening their houses and having kind of more grassroots, intimate programming and discussions and stuff like that. Hillel Gimel also has this kind of programming. It serves that function as well. And as a member of, I used to work for Birthright. I've been a resident of Moishe House, and now I'm myself a member of Hillel Gimel here in Krakow. They do a really good job, and the programming here rivals anything that you would see in North America, anything that you would see in Israel. in terms of quality, in terms of peer-led educational discussions and lectures and that kind of thing. So it's really what we offer at JCC Krakow throughout the generational pipeline is highly competitive, if you will, and also very comparable to a Jewish education that you would find in a normal North American or in a Canadian or in an Israeli community. And maybe Jonathan, this is, I think, Jonathan's favorite part of the week is our weekly Shabbat dinner. So he might want to talk about that a little bit. I don't want to steal his thunder from this one. Oh, he might be muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I'm just mindful of our time. So yeah, we do, which is I think one of our highlight programs. We do a Shabbat dinner here every week. In the normal, talking about non-COVID period, it's about maybe 50 community members, and then can be 50, 100 guests from all over. That's a big part of what we do. We have a kosher kitchen inside the building, do all the kosher catering, plus groups are visiting us. So the kosher, sharing food. Meeting over food is an important part of what we do. So we celebrate all Jewish holidays here. We build the sukkah, Rosh Hashanah, we'll have Pesach Seders for a couple hundred people. So it's, I think really the interesting idea is in a young, growing Jewish community, almost everything is being done by one institution, which is just a very different model than the North American model. And it's not necessarily a good, I don't mean to suggest that it's a better model. It's just that, this is the way that it's been. And this is, our community needs these services. So no one else is providing them, so we provide them. But if I were starting from scratch, I might not say, oh, let's have something and let's call it a JCC and let's make that every single aspect of the community. But that's more or less what's going on here. But the Shabbat dinners are a signature program of what we do.
And I'll jump in really quickly, very, very fast. Another large chunk of the puzzle of JCC Krakow's operations are our volunteers. We have upwards of 70 volunteers at any given time. I would say 99% of them are non-Jews, local Krakowians who are just interested in Jewish life and interested in volunteering at the JCC and learning and helping. And that was very surprising for me when I got here for the first time. And my favorite thing about the whole program is that at Shabbat dinners every week, we have volunteers who are helping serve the meals. And the reason that they're doing this is so that the community members who are observant or who might be observant of Shabbat don't have to work on Shabbat. So the community members can sit at the table and the volunteers come in and they serve the meal, and they're a part of the meal. They eat with us as well. And it's just like this really, really beautiful, wholesome, accessible, inclusive dinner. And it happens, again, outside of the COVID world, it happens almost every single week. And it's just really special. And sometimes the amount of people that attend these Shabbat dinners, including visitors and people who are passing through, are upwards of like 60, 70, 80 people. So these are pretty big productions for us, and it's great. And then also we have, every time that there's a Jewish holiday, we've got stuff going on. We have Rosh Hashanah Seders with the entire community. Sometimes those get, in excess of 100, 120 people. Sometimes the Seders and the Pesach Seders are so large that we have to like monopolize walking spaces in the JCC. We've got tables going down the entry corridor. We've got tables on the third floor, and it's just like this massive production. It's very fun. But we celebrate all the holidays. We've got Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. We're kind of venturing into Hanukkah right now. It's a little bit early this year, earlier than normal, but we're trying to assess what we're able to do with COVID right now and what we can do with Hanukkah. We also have a big Pesach party, Pesach Seder. We have a Purim party, a Purim costume party where everybody kind of dresses up and we partake. And the holidays are just really great. And in addition, right here, you'll see in the middle photo at the bottom is our community Rabbi Avi, who has a similar story to Jonathan. He's from New York. I don't remember which borough, but from New York, and moved to Israel. He lives in Israel now. And he kind of splits his time between the Krakow community and his family in Israel. So every 2 weeks he's in Israel and then 2 weeks in Krakow, and he kind of bounces back and forth. And he's our community rabbi, and he does programming with all of these different, sections of the community, kids, young adults, teens, young families, Holocaust survivors. And he's here for educational purposes. If somebody's interested in converting to Judaism from the community, most of the time their first stop is to talk to Rabbi Avi. Maybe he'll talk them out of it, but most of the time they're really excited by it. And so Rabbi Avi is a huge piece of the puzzle. He's actually flying into Krakow from Israel tomorrow, so we're excited to see him for the first time in a few weeks tomorrow. And Jonathan kind of talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago, but something that we are enormously proud of and took an enormous amount of effort and dedication, but was well worth it, of course, was taking care of our at-risk members during the pandemic, including the Holocaust survivors. We are so thrilled to say that not a single Holocaust survivor was lost because of COVID. Every single one of them stayed home, stayed healthy. We helped them stay healthy. And in keeping with kind of some of these trends that we're seeing psychologically, emotionally, physically, post-pandemic lockdown, we're now focusing a lot on physical rehabilitation, psychological rehabilitation, to make sure that post-pandemic these members are able to kind of come back to normal life, and that there was no lasting damage from the pandemic. And we are making enormous strides, and we're very proud of it. And for the people who still need it, we're providing direct support, we're providing deliveries. And of course, we will continue to do so as long as necessary. Which gets us to my favorite part, and my actual title here is not Slide Master, as you might think. My official title at the JCC, I'm the director of the Ride for the Living. At a 40,000 foot glance, the Ride for the Living is our single largest annual fundraiser. And that single largest annual fundraiser takes the form of a momentous 4-day experience in Krakow that includes a myriad of different educational and social programming options, all of which kind of revolve around this 60-mile bike ride from Auschwitz to the gates of JCC Krakow. We do it all in one fell swoop in one day on a Friday, which leads directly into a massive 700-person community Shabbat in Krakow in this massive venue. Ride for the Living was started, I believe, in 2015 by a guy named Robert Desmond. He was a British fellow, and he came from Britain into kind of the EU mainland on a mission. And his mission was to ride his bike to Poland by way of various sites of significant importance to the Holocaust. So he'd stop in, he'd ride, and then he'd stop in certain concentration camps or synagogues that were firebombed or lost in the war, ghettos, that kind of thing. And eventually he biked all the way through Europe into Poland, and his initial goal was to end at Auschwitz. And upon ending this massive trek, this massive odyssey across Europe, he came to JCC Krakow, where he met with Jonathan. And after talking and after getting to know one another, it was very clear that Robert's ride should never have ended in Auschwitz, because if given the option, nobody should ever end anything in Auschwitz, because so many people didn't have that option. So Jonathan sat with Robert, and they planned, and thus the Ride for the Living was born. And Robert symbolically, a year later, finished his ride from Auschwitz to the JCC with 15 community members. This started the fundraising trend. And in the first year of the ride, with those 15 people and their friends and families who donated from all over the world, enough money was raised to send a large delegation of our Holocaust survivors to Israel for the very first time. And it was this enormous project. And we got them all on planes, and we sent them to Israel, and we came with them to Israel, and they were able to see the Holy Land for the first time, many of whom never thought that they'd have the opportunity. So it was this amazing, amazing project. And because of the success, we knew we couldn't stop there. And so since 2015 and those 15 people, it's now grown into this massive worldwide, I would say phenomenon, but maybe we're not there just yet, maybe in my own mind, but massive worldwide experience. And now we've got about 300 people that join us in Krakow for the ride every year. What that looks like is we have tours of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and then we have this massive ride 60 miles from Auschwitz to the JCC. We finish and there's confetti and the community is there. The kids are there. It's very beautiful. We go right into a massive 700-person community Shabbat, which is tied into the larger Jewish Culture Festival that's happening around the same time. We always make sure to plan kind of in tandem with them so that while people are here, they can also partake in Jewish Culture Festival events. And in that way, we bring all of these people, we raise a lot of good money, and it's the JCC's largest fundraiser. Obviously, in 2020, we were not able to have people in Krakow, very sad for us. And we kind of shifted gears, as many people did, but we literally shifted gears from the in-person ride to the global challenge, which grew from 300 participants. In the first year, I think we hit almost 1,500 participants who joined from around the world. And they all symbolically rode 60 miles in their own communities. And not only riding, but they also were able to walk and run. So we made it a little bit more accessible for people who were not necessarily as comfortable on bikes, so they could participate. And then this year, I guess, this past summer in 2021, we grew again to 3,000 participants from all over the world. And this coming year in 2022, we're going to operate simultaneously. We'll have the month-long in June, we're going to have the Ride for the Living Global Challenge, where thousands of participants are going to bike ride and they're going to run and they're going to walk 60 miles from their own community. And then we're also going to have the very first in-person ride in Krakow, which is very, very exciting. And to give you kind of a little taste, we're going to maybe watch the promo video from this past year's Global Challenge.
Dad.
What? Don't interrupt me. I'm getting prepared for the Ride for the Living.
Ride for the Living, an experience that has become so much more than just a bike ride. To our community here in Krakow and to many others, Ride for the Living is a testament to hope and revival in a place formerly stricken by darkness. Since the inaugural 15-person ride in 2014, Ride for the Living has grown into an international movement, with participants traveling to Krakow from all around the world and riding in their own communities to support our Holocaust survivors and their families, who have redefined what it means to be Jewish in today's world.
The ride helps raise awareness, and it helps, bring a lot of energy. It's one of my highlights every year here in Krakow.
The ride helps us celebrate Jewish life, and it provides an opportunity for our community to show the world that Jewish life in Poland did not end with the Holocaust. Last year, the coronavirus stopped us from coming together in Krakow, but it didn't stop thousands of people from helping celebrate the resurgence of Jewish life in Krakow. So we went back to the drawing board and came up with Virtual Ride for the Living, a brand new experience that united over 1,300 participants from 16 different countries who collectively cycled 147,000 miles, almost 6 full laps around the Earth. In recent months, JCC Krakow has mobilized its entire team of staff and volunteers to ensure the needs of our Holocaust survivors, seniors, and other at-risk members are being met. We're going through a difficult period, but remain dedicated to providing necessary services to all our members and supporting them through these uncertain times. From delivering food and medicine to Holocaust survivors, to producing digital educational content for our members who wish or need to stay home and out of harm's way. Jewish life in Poland did not end after the Holocaust. So if a global pandemic can't stop us from riding together, nothing can. We hope you'll join us this year in 2021 as we welcome a new era of Ride for the Living. Our community knows a little something about resilience. Join us as we reignite the light in Krakow.
And really quickly, I'll just jump in. I have a quick correction. The very first Ride for the Living was 2014, not 2015. I misspoke. That was my mistake. So 2014. And this is not a sales pitch. We're just really proud of the program. So I wanted to make sure to mention it today in this presentation.
So I'm gonna maybe open it up for questions. I've seen some questions coming through a little bit, actually. Sorry, Ryan. Do you want to finish with the? No, finish up and then I'll go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Okay, so maybe Jonathan wants to talk about this too. This was kind of his a brainchild of his.
Just very quickly, you have Yom HaShoah and you have January 27th, which are 2 days to commemorate the Holocaust, the victims of the Holocaust. But we thought how important the survivors are to our community and to other communities, and how they represent a bridge from the past to the present and the future. And we thought, you have days, it's chocolate chip cookie day, and it's, pizza day, and it's this day, and it's that day. And there's no dedicated day for Holocaust survivors. So we decided to start one. So in Krakow, we started Holocaust Survivor Day, and it became, we got it to be, straight away an international event. In Israel, at the National Theater in Israel, they brought 900 survivors together. The president, the foreign minister spoke to them. We did events, started across a few places around the world and in the US. In the US, Steven Spielberg recorded something for us. And we are speaking to the White House now about having an event, bringing survivors from all over the US to the White House lawn on June 26th, which is Holocaust Survivor Day. And in Israel, any day now, I'm waiting for confirmation that it's going to be an official day recognized by the Israeli government. And at the end of the day, if Holocaust survivors don't deserve their own day, then who does? And I think that the message of the Holocaust must be for us not only a message of tragedy and a message of loss, but also a message of resilience, a message of strength, and a message of hope. And I think we need that message today. And that's the message of the Holocaust survivors. And they've given us so much, and we want to give back to them and thank them and celebrate them.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on, Ryan. I was just going to say I'll read the questions that came through, if that's okay. But please.
Well,
continue.
now this is just fluff, but we're very proud of some of the visitors that have passed through our gates every now and then. So, obviously, Speaker Pelosi here with Jonathan, Natalie Portman in the middle, the Pope on the right, and then at the bottom left is the President of Ireland, Michael Higgins, came a couple of years ago for the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz.
He came because he said he saw how much green was in our building, so that's why he visited us.
Are there any Polish nationals? Are you ready for questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say I don't know if you guys can hear the questions on your end, so I'm gonna we have one question here, and then if that's okay, I'll read the ones from the chat. So Cynthia, what was your question?
Are there any Polish nationals that come to your center who were in the Holocaust and they were SS or they were involved with the German government in the 6 million Jewish people that died? Do they ever come to this situation?
Sorry, that was a long one. I can't repeat that.
So
Yeah, no. I mean, no.
Do they ever come and talk about their experiences? Or I understand there's a few who go to the museum, the Holocaust Museum, and they have. Does anyone ever come to your center and talk about their experiences in decimating 6 million Jews at Auschwitz or wherever they were to follow orders of the SS?
Thank you, Cynthia.
No. We have survivors that come here. We've had people connected to the Holocaust in different ways, but we've never had perpetrators. We've never had, Nazis, guards, or anyone that came and spoke to our community. No.
Okay, thank you. So Francis asked, did sisters ever, I think this is referring to your wife, right? Did the sisters ever reconnect with their father?
No. So no. The older sister, the one who isn't my wife, is a little bit was in touch because she had she had children, and I think she was in touch a little bit with the father, but my wife hasn't spoken to her father in 30 years.
Okay. Someone also asked how to make a donation, and there's a link in the chat for those on Zoom, and for anyone here, I can provide that, and I'll put it on YouTube.
Was that Ryan? Did Ryan ask that question?
No, actually.
Sometimes
Sharon
Ryan asks.
I'm up for a promotion this month.
Exactly.
So to what extent, if any, does JCC Krakow reflect the pre-war structures that supported the Jewish community? For example, Akiva, HaShomer, Hatzair, Maccabi. What is the nature of your interaction with the Jewish organizations that served the community prior to your arrival?
It's an excellent question. Some of those pre-war organizations have been reconstituted in Poland, and those we do work with Shomer Hatzair and Maccabi are more active in Warsaw. Warsaw community is much bigger. The city is much bigger than Krakow, but we do work with them, absolutely. So to some degree, it's been interesting that you have new organizations like a JCC, which is not reflective of any pre-war Jewish communal structure. And then you do have some of these older organizations that we absolutely do work with them.
Thank you. That was a question from Joy Wolf Ensor. I have to tell you, when I was in Krakow and we drove, the poor planning on my end from Krakow to Warsaw, there was some kind of overnight traffic, and we were in traffic for many, many hours. And I went to a restroom in a gas station that I walked to, and that was a beautiful structure. And I was very surprised to see that. So I just wanted to say that, but Krakow is a very beautiful city, but the gas stations are very nice as well. Abraham asked, much nicer than in New Jersey. Can you talk about Chabad in Krakow?
Sure. There is a Chabad in Krakow. We partner with them. We work very closely with them. The Chabad rabbi is a good friend of mine. My wife was nanny to his children. So yeah, there's Chabad in Krakow. A pretty active Chabad. I think in many ways we're probably doing a little more outreach than Chabad. I would say Chabad is focused on the more Orthodox members of the community and Israeli tourists, whereas we're sort of much more open to everybody. And if somebody is Jewish according to their father, or it's one grandparent or something, then for us that's plenty, and we welcome them to be members. We're also open for everybody. You know, we have over 300 people that are studying Hebrew at the JCC or through the JCC, and most of them aren't Jewish at all. So we seek to be, while we're trying to serve the Jewish community, we are a center for the whole community. We want non-Jews to learn about us and learn about Jews, and we think that helps building good neighbors or helping create relationships helps us in the community. And we don't see ourselves only as a Jewish community center. We see ourselves as a center for the community, and we are guided very much by Tikkun Olam, by repairing the world. We work very closely with the LGBT community and the Roma community, and with refugees this year. Our focus, lots of problems in Poland with refugees now on our eastern border, and we are making a huge push to help other disadvantaged communities in Poland, the Muslim community as well.
Great. I know it's the middle of the night there, and I'm just gonna.
No, not quite. We're okay. We're good. Ryan and I are good.
Okay, we have one question over here, and then a couple more in the chat. Ivan.
In Poland, are y'all closed? Are businesses closed on Shabbat in Poland? Where y'all what's the name of the town?
Krakow.
Krakow. Y'all call that? Are businesses closed on Shabbat in Krakow?
No, they're closed on Sunday.
What's the monetary values?
Ruth, you'll go next.
Yes. Hi, congratulations on all your work. It's uplifting to hear the story. Is there a Jewish resurgence in Brest-Litovsk?
Did you hear that? Is there a Jewish resurgence in Brest-Litovsk?
Right.
Brest. Brest is not in Brest is in Belarus.
Yeah, okay.
Brest is, I think, Belarus at this point, not in Poland, right? Sebastian? Belarus.
Ruth.
I just want to know what the monetary is. It American dollars?
Oh, no, it's not American. What is the money? You're in the EU now, right?
We are in the EU, but we're not in the Eurozone. So our currency is the Polish zloty. And it's about, right now, it's about 4 zloty per $1 US.
Another question over here.
Oh, yes,
Barbara.
Yeah.
Does the average person,
Around the roof.
does the average person in Krakow speak Polish, Hebrew, or most everybody speak English?
Does the average person speak, did you hear, what are the languages spoken?
So people speak Polish here in Poland, but people are interested in other languages. A lot of the young people speak English because that's, the lingua franca, the language of the world today. Most of the older people, because of communism, learned Russian in school. They were forced to learn Russian. And then when communism ended in 1989, nobody wanted to learn Russian anymore.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions from the chat from Shoshana. How large is the Jewish population of Krakow now? And how many members are there at your center?
So we're about 750 members, and the Jewish population is, people are still finding out they're Jewish. So probably, we estimated probably 3,000 or 4,000 at least.
On that note, do you provide any genealogical services for people that either wanted to discover whether they're Jewish or found out they're Jewish and want to know more about their ancestors?
We do. We have a genealogist on staff here. So absolutely, you can be in touch with us and we help you find out about your Jewish roots, just like we help people who suspect they're Jewish locals find out about their background here in Krakow.
Great. Is Annette, that was asked by Annette, is Annette your genealogist, or that was a real question? Never mind.
No, I have no plants. I have no plants in the audience. Okay. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And I'll just jump in. If you want to get in touch with us, you can shoot me an email. It's very easy. Ryan@JCC Krakow. I'm happy to put you in touch with the genealogist. Or you can also write to us on Facebook right here, facebook.com/JCC Krakow.
Great. And what type of support does the JCC receive from the non-Jewish community?
I mean, we have many volunteers. We are, we have non-Jews coming through the building all the time. We feel that we're very connected and integrated into this community. So we feel strong support. Most of our, I should say that our budget, over 90% of our budget does come from North America, comes from American Jews who learn about our story and maybe have Jew roots in Poland or maybe don't, and just want to help our community of Holocaust survivors and their children and grandchildren thrive. So we're in an interesting position of being mostly supported by American Jews, although we're providing services here in Poland.
Great. No more questions over here. Okay. Just one more question. Thank you for your patience. What brand of Judaism is taught? It's from Francis.
What brand of Judaism is taught? Well, I think that the same brand of Judaism that's taught in your JCC or in the JCC in Minneapolis or any other JCC, we want people to be Jewish. Whatever flavor of Judaism they become interested in is up to them, and we don't try to push people in any direction. I think what's interesting is that very often people come in here who are Jewish but have no idea about anything. So of course, do you teach people that eating kosher is crucial, or do you teach people that eating kosher is an option? So of course we have these things and we think about them a lot, but we just want people we want people that have Jewish roots to feel connected and have the opportunity to reconnect. These are victims of the Holocaust. They were not killed in the gas chambers, but they were cut off from their own identity because of the Holocaust. And we want to give them, do everything we can to offer them a chance to come back into the Jewish world. And by helping Jewish life in Poland, the rest of the Jewish world is reclaiming some of those victims from the Holocaust. We can't bring back to life the 6 million, but this category of Jews that weren't killed, but that were cut off, we can do something and actually affect that number.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read 2 comments and one final question, if that's okay. Joel said that it's fascinating, enlightening, and inspirational. So thank you, Ryan and Jonathan, for all you are doing. And Annette, who asked the question about the genealogical services, says that she's been helping people reconnect with their Jewish heritage, and she's based in New York City. So that's interesting. And then one final question.
You have a very broad-based membership of the Nashville JCC. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we sent this out to JCC Association. So
I got it, JCCA.
Yes. And this kind of reconnects just to the comment that was made earlier on. Francis wanted to know, how safe is it to be Jewish in Poland?
We feel very safe. There's anti-Semitism here as there is in, anywhere in the world these days, but we feel safe. Our center's been open for 13 years. For the first 9 years before we opened the preschool, we had no security at all. Gate wide open, front door wide open. We're in a busy part of the city. It's a big orange sign that says Jewish Community Center. We've never had any issues. We only have a security guard since we opened the preschool. I felt that changed the equation a little bit. So we feel very, very safe. The Chabad rabbi also feels very safe walking around with a kippah and a beard and in black and stuff. So there are problems here. There are issues here, of course, but we feel the community itself doesn't feel a big threat.
Great. Well,
I just want to say, can I say something?
Yeah. Una.
Yes, okay. I just want to say, I started at the fitness center in Orlando, Florida. And then I joined this senior group that was called the 39ers. But after the pandemic, during the pandemic, we were doing virtual. You know, we talk about how we felt being at home and all that stuff. And we had a fitness person come and talk to us. Now that we can get back to the center, they call us seniors on the move. So we do a lot of stuff, and they have an academy for the kids. And as Jonathan said, it's multicultural. And that means that you learn about the Jewish people and you get to communicate with each other. And thank you for today. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for your kind words, and I'm happy that you're involved in this great program.
Yes.
And I like your name.
Oh,
I know.
Una, yes.
Una, Una, not Una. Una.
And you pronounce it very well too. But some people say Una.
Oh, how dare they? Una, of course.
Yes.
Okay, well, I know that you guys have other places to be. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Ryan. This was great. And thank
It was
you
our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope to one day visit your lovely community.
Yes, you're invited. Let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Bye now. Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.